On the statement made in the House of Commons yesterday on bus funding.
My Lords, another weak and another highly operatic statement from the person in the other place who wishes to be known as the passenger-in-chief. But unlike the statement we had last week, this one does actually have some substance, because its purpose is to announce how the government is going to spend on buses the £1 billion approximately allocated for that purpose by the Chancellor in her budget a few weeks ago. And about £750 million or so is to be given to local authorities, and the other quarter approximately to be given to bus companies. Now, there is in this a very important methodological change that I would like to explore with the noble Lord the Minister. And it is that the Secretary of State announced that previously councils had to compete for funding, wasting resources and delaying decisions. Now, in making that statement, she puts her finger on something which has come to the attention of quite a number of noble lords, not least those who are members of the Built Environment Select Committee, which I have the privilege to chair in your Lordship's House. And that is the widespread use of bidding by local authorities is time-consuming, does cost money, and is particularly wasteful, if you like, for those local authorities that bid and actually receive nothing at the end of the process. So perhaps there is a case for something being done about this. Perhaps. I also understand that governments want to know that the money that they're allocating is going to go to good projects that stand up to scrutiny. So there is a balance to be struck. Nonetheless, the Right Honourable Lady has made a point of interest here. But what she has said is that we are now going to take a fundamentally different approach. We are allocating funding based on a formula. The formula includes local needs, population, the distance buses travel, and levels of deprivation. Now, I would love to explore this formula. I would love to know more about it. I know what a formula looks like. It has pluses and minuses. It has multipliers. It has weightings. And it shows how money is to be allocated according to certain criteria. I would like to explore this formula, but it hasn't been published. That is the most astonishing thing. We do not know what the formula is or how these particular criteria have been melded together to produce an outcome. And indeed, what do they mean? Local needs. Well, how many governments are going to allocate money that are not that is not related to local needs? Population. Does that mean that areas with higher populations get more money or less money? And if it means they get more money, what is that saying to rural areas, which are very dependent on buses? The distance buses travel. What does that mean? Again, in rural areas, buses may travel a very long way as far as distances go, but does that mean they're getting more money, or are they getting less money? Because it's the shorter distances that are being rewarded. And levels of deprivation. I think we have a reasonable idea probably what that means. So what does it all mean? Was it consulted on? I think we should like to know. Local authorities might have wanted to have a say in how this money was being allocated and how a formula was being developed. Was an independent assessment made of what its effects and impacts would be? Were alternatives considered by Department for Transport officials before this particular formula was alighted upon? And how crucially does it relate to what the Deputy Prime Minister might be doing when she comes to allocate money to local authorities, because it is very likely, I imagine, that she too will say that the bidding system is discredited and she wants to move on to a more formulaic allocation of funding. And as I say, there is an argument for doing that. But the argument depends fundamentally on the credibility of the formula that's being used, and that means it has to be exposed to light. Now, finally, I would ask very simply, and I don't mean to be rude about anybody, certainly not the noble Lord the Minister or his government, But and I also know that £1 billion is just loose change for a government that is determined to spend its way to growth. I know all of that. But we still would like to be assured on this side of the House that a formula which nobody can see, which depends on criteria that need to be interpreted and not in any sense plain, could be simply a way of spending money to reward your mates. Well, is that what is going on here? Because there's every reason to think that there might be.